Today we will discuss about staffing and human resource management. In this lecture, we will be discussing about the learning outcomes to understand how staffing function helps in filling the jobs with right number of people in the right positions or place at the right time. And we will also cover understanding the importance of human resource management process in identifying, selecting and retaining high performing employees in organizations. Who are high performing employees? High performing employees are those who will be working with in different positions and who would coordinate effectively with people and who can perform their job responsibilities, so that the organization's performance improves. So, we will start with the definition of staffing, and then I will explain what is the overview of the staffing function and then situational factors affecting staffing. So, let us start with the definition of staffing. Staffing is defined as filling and keeping filled positions in organizational structure. As in an organization, there are different roles and responsibilities and there are different positions in different levels. So, those positions need to be filled by the right manpower. The person who is given the responsibility should have adequate competencies to exhibit the performance. So, this is done by identifying workforce requirements, inventorying the people available in the organization and recruiting, selecting, promoting, appraising their performance by giving them adequate training and developing the job holders to accomplish tasks most efficiently and effectively. As an overview of the staffing function, staffing relates to total management system. Staffing requires an open systems approach and it is carried out within the organization, which is in turn linked to external environment. I will explain this with respect to how an organization is perceived as an open systems. An organization takes inputs from external environment in terms of the resources, land, capital, machinery, and these the resources are inputs in the system, and the various processes in the organization, the management functions through various plans, the planning function, organizing, directing, controlling and various coordination of each of these functions helps the organization to transform the inputs, the raw materials into finished goods, which is like the products and services which are to be used by the customers, to be used which is meant for consumption in the external environment. So, organization cannot function in silos, or the departments, units, they cannot work in as an independent ones, but they have to work in coordination with each other, and they are also they can effectively function if they procure, if they have a coordination with external environment, if they keep on receiving signals, they keep on getting inputs from external environment. So, it is not just like a closed system, but an organization is perceived as an open systems with coordination with various functions and activities within the organization, as well as coordinating with external environment, the stakeholders in the external environment like the government, the other organizations, the competitors organizations, the suppliers and several other stakeholders like the media. So, there is a interfunctional interdependence of various parts, various elements within the organization, as well as coordination with the other organizations, other firms, so that the organization can remain competitive, can be sustainable. So, with this objective, we will discuss how the staffing function is relevant to the organization. When an organization, when an enterprise plans, so the organization or enterprise plans the number of in the plan, like how it will initiate, how it will start the business, what would be its products and services, which what would be its core competence, what plan it would execute. The organization would come up with an objective, with the purpose of the organization. So, in planning, the organization sets the vision or its long term plan, long term plan, long or short term vision, or the way ahead, how it would move forward, carry forward. Then further it decides its purpose. Purpose comes with its the products and services, the organization would have. Then how it would, what would be the core technology, the values, the core values, the competencies would be used, and the resources that the organization would have. So, what is the purpose, why the business is being, or why the business, what business the firm would be in, and which would be its geographical area of operation, which geographical territory the firm would venture into. So, all these things are decided in the planning stage, and further once the plans are there in place, then next would be organizing. Organizing means allocation of resources to different people in the organization, having a proper structure, defining the roles and responsibilities, and deciding the hierarchy. So, number and kinds of managers required, then comes the need for how many people would be required, who should be given what type of responsibility based on the level of competency of individual. Then, so there is also a manager inventory which is there in the organization, as well as this inventory has to be developed. So, based on the number and kind of managers required, or the positions, the vacancies and the inventory is an input to analysis of the present and future needs of managers. So, based on these two inputs, the organization, the managers can take necessary steps towards how many positions, how many managers would be required for future positions, future vacancies, or in the say present roles, how many people would be required. So, this can be procured from external sources, as well as this requirement can be placed through internal sources. So, both these can help in, both the internal and external sources can help in say assessing the recruitment, selection, placement, promotion and separation stage. And then finally, there would be an appraisal, career strategy, training and development of individuals. So, this will so this entire process is, it works in coordination with each other. So, what we discussed is an overview of the staffing function, which relates to the total management system. Staffing requires an open systems approach. So, it is an open systems approach. An organization cannot necessarily recruit from within. So, if there is a talent which is available, readily available in the market, so that person can be hired who can execute tasks efficiently and effectively. So, it is carried out within an organization, which in turn is linked to the external environment. Next, we will discuss about the situational factors affecting staffing. What are the factors which affect staffing? There are external factors, include the level of education, the prevailing attitudes in the society, such as attitude towards work, whether the person has a favorable attitude or an unfavorable attitude, what is the attitude towards work, the laws and regulations which are guiding employment that directly affect staffing, economic conditions and supply and demand for managers outside the enterprise. Internal factors guiding the or affecting staffing are organizational goals, organization's goals, like whether the firm would have a cost minimization or innovation strategy, or the firm is into say the emphasis on, there is emphasis on quality. So, what is the organizational goal? Then tasks technology, what is the task which will be given to the employee, the technology, organizational structure, the kind of people employed by the enterprise, the demand for and supply of managers within the enterprise, the reward system and various kinds of the policies. So, these internal and external factors decide or they affect the staffing function. Moving further, we will discuss about what is human resource management. Human resource management is of paramount importance for an organization because without an effective human resource, an organization cannot perform. So, for performance we need to have people who can add value to the organization. The infrastructure, strategy, structure of an organization, capital plays a massive role in performance of an organization. Without all of these, an organization cannot run, but if we do not have people or adequate staffing measures, then our organization cannot also perform. So, if technology is there and infrastructure is present, but if people are not efficient, organization cannot perform. So, with this background, we will discuss about what is human resource management. It is of paramount importance and it is required first. It is an important staffing function. It involves getting the right people in the right place at right time, and human resource management requires, it involves training, appraising, acquisition of manpower and compensation, compensating employees, attending to labor relations, health and well-being of employees, safety measures and fairness concern. So, all these are important parts or important elements of human resource management. Then let us discuss about the evolution of human resource management and the issues driving the evolution of human resource management. So, I will start with the major business issues. The small businesses and workers, initially there were the common titles of human resource, there was no, in the business there was no HR people. Then 1900s, there was a growth of large scale enterprise due to effect of earlier industrial revolution. World War I, the concept of labor relations, the title started emerging as the labor relations or the personnel. Before that, as we have discussed, there used to be small businesses and workers guilds. So, there was no human resource management title given to the people who were working in the organization. But since 1900s onwards, the growth of large scale enterprises started taking place due to the industrial revolution, the early phases of industrial revolution, and there was focus on the titles of labor relations and personnel. Then 1920s, the worldwide economic depression, Hawthorne's human relations studies started emerging. The first labor legislations came into being, and then the emphasis started taking on, or the focus on industrial relations, personnel started gaining importance. Later on in 1940s, World War II, the growth of large diversified enterprises. Then the enterprises started moving beyond the geographical areas, the geographical territories. So, with these there were concerns for personnel administration. Earlier, as we have seen, there was no title given to the people working in the organization, there was no HR people. Later, in the First World War, labor relations started gaining slowly started gaining importance, and in 1920s, the expansion of enterprises towards the growth of large diversified firms, the diversification of firms have given an importance to personnel administration. Then next, with 1960s civil rights and compliance, the personnel was again gaining importance, and then growing impact of in 1980s there was emphasis on the globalization and technology and emergence of knowledge or service economy or human capital. Then the personnel or human resources, again it started taking shape. So, this has cited how human relations or human resource management slowly started gaining importance with no existence to known as personnel, labor relations or industrial relations and human resources or personal resources. Then 2000s onwards, modern organizations effectiveness, strategic human resource planning started taking the center stage of discussion, and human resource management came into full force. So, after that there were people started talking about the importance of human resource management. What is it? How is it relevant to the organization? What it can do to the organization for sustainable business? So, human resource management is important for managers because HRM helps finding employees not performing at peak capacity. Human resource also helps avoid hiring the wrong person and for the job or experiencing high turnover. So, it takes care of identification of the right manpower, hiring right person and also reducing the turnover. So, these are two important things which it takes care of, and then it is a source of competitive advantage by creating superior shareholder value. Let us talk about how human resources can create a competitive, can it be a competitive advantage? Can it be a core competence for a firm? Yes. As we have discussed that resources are competence for an organization, the tangible resources. Tangible resources like the land, capital, technology, the machinery, they can be copied. These are the tangible assets of an organization. Tangible assets of one organization in no time can be copied by another organization. But what remains competitive advantage for a firm is the intangible asset. What is that intangible asset? What cannot be seen is the knowledge and experience of employees. So, employees, if we hire the right person in an organization, or we otherwise call it as a person job fit, the right person working in a right organizational culture with the right position being given, with the job or assignment being given, would compete, would excel in the job, would try to perform effectively in the job, which is very important for overall performance of organization. So, how this human resources can be a source of competitive advantage? If an employee is working in an organization, he acquires knowledge, experience and skills and competencies over a period of time. The knowledge, skills, competencies are inherent within an individual and which cannot be copied by another firm or a competitor's firm. So, what remains as a competitive advantage is the or competitors in what remains the competitive advantage is the knowledge and experience of employee, the opinion, the years of experience or the tacit knowledge which the person acquires. So, thus concluding this point is human resource is a source of competitive advantage by creating a superior shareholder value. Human resource significantly affects organizational performance. So, it is important asset for an organization. Next, we will discuss about what are the various parts or what defines the human resource management process. As we discussed, an organization is like an open system. So, the entire process of human resource management is an open systems where there is a human resource planning, which is this planning is a precursor to the recruitment process, which will further lead to the selection of the right manpower, identify and select competent employees to the organization, and these employees will be once selected. So, we will be discussing about what is human resource planning, which will include identification or forecasting the manpower needs. Human resource planning is how can we plan for the future needs of organizations, and then which follows recruitment, that is calling for vacant positions in the organization. After that there would be a selection process. Then in the selection process we identify and select the right talent for the organization. The person who is selected should be fit to the organization, should be a person fit to the job position, also should be fit to the organization's culture. And then the person who has been selected, after selection there is an orientation. That means the person is given or is familiarized to the organization's culture, to the positions, to the assignment being given to him, and also to the people who are working in the organization. So, it is a kind of a familiarization of the workforce with the existing resources, with the existing the position, what roles and responsibilities. And once the person gets accustomed or is acclimatized to the organization, we next move to training, giving him training so that he can effectively carry out the task. And so, provide employees with up to date knowledge, skills and competencies. So, this entire process of orientation and training will keep the manpower abreast or will make him to learn about, to give him an up to date knowledge about the skills and competencies required, the responsibilities which would be handled by him in the organization. So, it is a kind of familiarizing the employee with the assignments and giving him a kind of, say, imparting him the knowledge about the various job positions. And after that the person keeps on working, and in due course of time his performance is appraised. So, performance management system is the next step in the human resource management process. Performance management system consists of performance appraisal, joint goal setting and also associating the person's performance with the reward system. So, there is a complete process of performance management system, starts with goal setting, setting the what are the goals which the person has to achieve, and there is a performance appraisal form, and then there is a continuous evaluation and feedback associated with that. After that the person's compensation and benefits based on the performance, an individual is rewarded or he is given suggestions or feedback. So, then next is career development, the promotion. If the person performs effectively, he would be given a promotion. If there is some correction or there is a gap in the person's performance and the required needs of the organization, then there is a kind of a feedback being given or training, or the person is retrained so that he can develop his potentials. So, retain competent and high performing employees. So, in this process of human resource management or the human resource management process, it starts with forecasting the needs of manpower in the organization and ends up with selecting a person who would be effectively carrying out the task in the required position. So, in this process, if a person proves to be fit, he remains in the organization, and who does not appear to be fit leaves the organization. So, very objective of the process of human resource management or the entire process of human resource management is to retain and competent employees, to develop them into high performing employees. This figure shows the human resource management process, which comprises of 8 activities. The first activity is human resource planning, recruitment and selection. Ensures that competent employees are identified and selected. And the next two, that is orientation and training, involves providing employees with up-to-date knowledge and skills. The last section comprises of performance management, compensation and benefits and career development measures. So, which ensures that organization retains competent and high performing employees. So, what we discussed is there are 3 parts. First part comprises of activities which ensures competent employees are identified, identification of competent employees. The second part involves providing employees with up-to-date knowledge and skills. The last part consists of, or last part emphasizes on retaining high performing employees. So, the entire process of human resource management gives us helps us in identifying the right employees, giving them up-to-date knowledge and skills and retaining high performing individuals. Let us discuss each one of them in more details. The first part, as I discussed, human resource planning, is the process by which managers ensure that they have the right number and capable people in the right place and at the right time. So, right number and capable people in the right time at right place is very important. I will give you a reference of this need for human resource planning. At the time when the banks were nationalized, there was a need for manpower and there was recruitment without proper manpower planning. People were recruited as and when required, and then later on, which led to, in not only banks, but most of the organizations, most of the public sector units, in 1980s there was overstaffing being reported, and overstaffing led to decline in performance. There was lot of chaos, and so the later on, after this policy of 1990s, the organizations realized the importance of reducing the excess manpower through offering various schemes like voluntary retirement schemes. So, in this process they had reduced. After that, when the VRS scheme was launched, slowly there was emphasis on having, later on there was emphasis on having the right manpower, the capable or recruiting capable or competent people in the right positions at right time, in order to overcome the problems which they had encountered due to overstaffing. So, overstaffing will lead to decline in performance, reducing the efficiency of the organization. So, therefore, human resource planning is an important activity, is an important process, and HR planning helps organizations avoid sudden people shortages and also the surpluses. There should not be surplus as well as no shortage. So, HR planning entails 2 important steps. One is assessing current human resource and meeting future needs of manpower. Next, we will discuss about what is assessing current human resources. So, in the next section, we will discuss about human resource planning in more details. And what I have discussed here, I started the discussion with what is human resource management, what are the factors which have affected staffing functions, and what are the important steps, how human resource management started gaining importance. Right from 1900s, the HR personnel were not recognized, there was no designation of HR personnel, and slowly towards 2000s, human resource started gaining its full importance with being recognized as a proper designation, and slowly there is a movement towards the strategic human resource management. And then we discussed about the importance of human resource management, and we discussed the human resource management process in more details. The next section we will be discussing about the human resource planning function, recruitment, selection and several other like orientation, training, performance management system, the compensation and so on, and how does it help an organization to maintain its efficiency and effectiveness. Thank you.